Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and guests unveil astrology's ancient archetypes that continually build the collective experiences in our unconsciousness. Get ready to find your free will from your roots in the stars.
Music. I'm sorry, I forgot. I'm Sue Rose Minahan, and tonight is Talk Cosmos, and we're having the Moonbeam Team, and it is October 3, 2020, and we're in Seattle, Washington, Pacific time. So our conversation of the new moon and the full moon will be based from our location. And for the very last week, we're having the repeat show on Thursday morning on October 9th, and that's 6 o'clock in the morning Pacific time. But life is changing, and we have podcast one. Many people listen to it, and we welcome you to, if you missed part of this and tuned in, because we have this live at 1150 KKNW every Saturday night. But again, podcast one immediately has all of the replays, plus the fact that you can go to Talk Cosmos, where you can subscribe and you can find out about the guests and the schedule. We are talking about the new moon in Aries, but first it'll be, actually I'm all mixed up. It'll be the full moon in Aries, thank you, which was 2 days ago. Following in 2 weeks on the 16th, the Libra new moon. In a nutshell, I can say that the Aries full moon is breaking old ruts. But I will wait to give any more significance to this because we are ready for the Moonbeam Team.
Relating to the sun and moon's energies, including the planets and the entire cosmos for the month's systematic 2-week intervals of the new moon and full moon, plus the annual 4 to 5 eclipses, this is your Moonbeam Team.
I'm Sue Rose Minahan, host of Talk Cosmos, an evolutionary astrologer and consultant, plus a certified color energy coach. I explore creative expression as an artist, a musician, and write abundantly, stories to poetry. I love investigating mythology's language, philosophizing eternity, and I'm a perpetual student of life, seeing oneness of body, spirit of people, animals, and nature.
I'm Elizabeth Liz Muschett, certified astrologer, sacred healing counselor, tarotist, and numerologist, providing individual consultations, teaching and tutoring internationally, co-author of Gateways to Change, Keys to Navigating the Seas of Life, currently facilitating workshops in Marysville and Camino Island, Washington.
And I'm Sara Stromley, a Cranial Sacral Therapist and founder of Brain Body Therapy in Kirkland, Washington. I'm an evolutionary astrologer that incorporates different forms of horary, location mapping, and medical astrology into my practice. I enjoy uncovering flower and mineral frequencies that also support the mind-body coherence that aid in the healing journey.
And as Albert Einstein said, energy is never destroyed. Energy only changes.
Yes, indeed, and that is what we are trying to do with an Aries full moon that was October 1st, 2020, and here in Seattle at Pacific time was at 2:05 p.m. And it was 9 degrees Aries in 8 minutes, meaning it was in the first decade. So we begin this not just for the full moon or new moon, but as a total synopsis, one might say, of what each of us might consider to be significant. And I will start off by saying these partnerships of self and other, the relationships that constitute all of life, are being purged and realigned, reconditioned, reconstructed, so that we can have true mental connections. Liz, what would you say?
Well, that the direction of the wind is changing, so to stay flexible and start working on relationship issues. It's like try to let it come out in words or journaling or writing in a compassionate, good way so that you can make changes and don't hurt people.
A loving heart.
Yeah, this fiery moon theme this week, you've seen it all playing out in very historical ways. But Mars is the ruler of this chart. It's retrograde. It is powerful, and it can prevail in this situation. But the fact that it's retrograde, it wants strategy to get there.
Wow, strategy. Loving heart. Well, those are good motivations, and I think we're going forth of how to heal these emotional wounds. You know, Chiron is conjunct Chiron, the healer, the wounded healer that only found his mercy of his pain that he'd been inflicted with through death, actually, of the mortal soul, although that's how it was. And it's conjunct the moon of the emotions. So it's this awareness, isn't it, of the sun in Libra that's saying to us, heal this force of us, of our identities, of how we can be okay with ourselves, being ourselves.
Well, and being able to speak about it in a kind way to yourself and a kind way to others, because it's a past wound. So you're not in that moment, but it's important to put a voice to it and not stuff it down.
I'm going to jump right into that because I love this. The North Node is in Gemini the communicator, the connector, and ruled by Mercury. And Mercury in no nonsense Scorpio, early Scorpio, is directly opposite Uranus that has been sitting in Taurus and will be, that's just now going retrograde, wanting to really think about the truth of how we connect to ourselves in those words. This is really a theme that could be reminded about all the time. I like it.
Well, and it reminds me of the Ho'oponopono of looking at a picture, and I've even written a person's name down because sometimes I haven't had a picture, and it has a saying, but off of the top of my head, I love you, please forgive me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
And I'm sorry. Yes. It's like,
powerful.
So it's like, this would be a good time to do that, to just speak it out. You don't have to speak it to that person or where that wound came from. It could be a generational wound or a familiar wound that, maybe it's not appropriate to even speak to the person, but to find some healing with that.
It goes back to what we said in our little mantra together. Energy changes. It never gets destroyed. Yeah, but it can get transformed, not retransformed, transformed. Yes, Sarah, you're thinking. I can see. Always thinking, but I guess or maybe you were agreeing. Yes, about the energy.
Yeah, I really appreciate you pointing out the Chiron was really involved heavily and immersed in this, and but Aries is about the self, and it's like, how do I play into this, and what's my contribution to this? How did we get here? And it's just been really interesting because this Aries new moon, because it's kind of out of aspect with a lot of things. It really seeks to, because it's such an outward, fiery, pioneering.
Full moon.
It's just a full moon, but it's a outward energy that wants to engage, and it wants to release, and it wants to quickly take out frustrating situations and limitations. But it's felt like the target, it just can't get a lock on the target because it's just not quite there yet.
And we are in this long process. Speaking of moon, anytime moon is a process, we know as it goes through all its phases, that's indigenous, you might say, or indicative of its whole concept. But I'm suddenly realizing too that Mars is ahead in degree. It's 24 degrees. It is retrograde, as we know, and we might remind people we're in this middle period of a long 2-month period, I believe, of this Mars energy of our actions, retracing our shadow time since I think it was September, early September. We were looking that up on the 3rd. And so the point is, though, it's cutting away, isn't it? It's cutting away at the moon. You know, it's going ahead, it's ahead of the moon, but it's still that moon Chiron. It's cutting away, separating us. That's what Mars in Aries does. It wants to reinvent, and it needs to go forward. And so it isn't a simple process. Not hardly. Not when you cut things away. It can bleed a little bit, figuratively speaking.
Well, it's so interesting how Mercury, we're in the shadow of it going retrograde, and it goes retrograde on October 13th through November 3rd. And in Seattle area, that how the Chiron and the moon are conjunct or sitting together in the 3rd house of Mercury ruled house of communication. The planet Mercury is sitting in the 10th house with Juno, how we partner. So it's like communication is like a big theme right now. And this chart speaks a lot about relationships and partnerships.
Absolutely, because we might all remember, and I say this to our audience as we thread these ideas, the sun of the ever-giving light that our planets orbit is in Libra, which of course is relationships, and Venus. And of course, our talk is about the whole climate of everything, but that's a real big thread, a reminder going back to. And here in Seattle, which is our natal chart, is 1 degree early, I will say, Capricorn, and the geodetic, which is based from Greenwich, it goes around, is late 29 degrees. Point is that right now we were very Capricornian focused, interestingly, as a city, and all of the Capricorn stellium, which are still very numerous. I mean, there's Saturn at 25 degrees and Pluto at 22, Jupiter at 17, and then Pallas, which is an asteroid, yes?
Yes.
And at 14. But the point is, it's all in the 1st house. And Liz, you were talking about Boeings.
Oh, yeah, because for the new moon or the full moon chart, the 1st house is self, but we're looking at it for the Seattle area. So with those Capricorn planets, and the planets are visiting in Capricorn, and Pluto's about transformation, and Saturn's about businesses, and what is a viable way to move forward. And so we heard this week that the Boeing Dreamliner is moving to South Carolina out of Everett, Washington. So that kind of goes in line with this full moon, even though I know from personal people that have told me there's been plans to move some of this stuff for a long time. So it didn't just happen. But so it's really interesting how you can use the chart for your area that you live in. It's real interesting. Uranus is in the 4th house. And lately I'll hear from people that I haven't heard from in a short, maybe a month or two or even a few months. And, oh, guess what? I'm moving. It's like, so there's a huge migration of people moving closer to family, moving for a job, moving because they need to take care of a family member. So it just emphasizes that change. And with the Capricorn in the 1st house, it's like cities, towns, this northwest area here is going through a lot of deep transformational change.
With Pluto as a transformational focus, and then the belief systems of Jupiter, and all of these aspects. I mean, we're just trying to show people many senses or aspects and dimensions of how the life that we're experiencing is occurring, because transformation does take an enormous period of focus and time. It's not immediate. In fact, as we mentioned earlier, I did on another show, in Seattle, it's very difficult to reserve a U-Haul. I mean, it is a big exodus. And I have read in Epoch, EPOCH, recently, that Seattle is one of the major large cities that is experiencing a huge exodus of people. And it's unusual because usually in times of crisis, the cities resurge, whereas now this isn't quite the situation. It's because COVID is for families and schools and many situations.
It could be for shipping purposes too, that a lot of things are being tied up as well. But
for transportation,
yeah.
That's interesting because that's
Yeah.
the North Node.
Yeah.
Fascinating. That's
And New York
true.
City's having the same issue of trying to be able to rent a U-Haul.
Yes, and the cities that people are going to, according to this article, was Dallas, Austin, and I don't remember all the others.
Mhm.
I don't know. But it's so true. Now,
Well, the ascendant of this chart, the first house, is ruled. We have Sagittarius, and it's 27 minutes basically, and it's on the galactic center. And to me, Sagittarius is about our higher truth, higher learning, our belief systems, and we're upgrading to new ones possibly at this time. And 27 reduces down to a number 9, and 9's about finishing up, culminating, endings to begin anew. So that's kind of goes along with the transformation, regeneration to finish some things up, to be prepared to start new things.
it does again and again in a chart always continually replicate a theme in its many focuses, just like a house has many rooms. You've got this usage and that use, but it's a house. How do you use it? Because there's so many senses of tension here. There's the cosmos that is represented by Neptune, a squaring, that means intention to the nodes. It's all mutable. And we're really oscillating between belief systems of where we're coming from and reconstructing them to our new neighborhoods. And that's indicative of moving. And then Mars, that engine that Sarah, you're mentioning, although we all are, is in this huge tension squaring to the Capricorn. Because back 6 months ago, if we look at the new moon in Aries back on March 24th, that was, at that time, it was 4 degrees Aries. And now this Aries full moon is 9 degrees. So there's a 5-degree difference, but very close. And of course, the outer planets haven't moved much. What was so interesting thinking about Mars was that Mars was conjunct that stellium with Pluto and Jupiter.
In Capricorn.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Saturn, that has now been retrograde, although just recently since then, went direct, I think just a few days ago.
On September 28th, Saturn went direct.
Which was quite, I think, quite an experience. But at that time, it was in 0 degrees Aquarius, which all of these phases of new moons, full moons is one indication of how we're moving towards a future event, aspect, cosmology. And that would be, because it's in cycles, would be when it's the 20-year cycle of Jupiter conjunction with Saturn, which will be at 0 degrees Aquarius, just like it was when COVID started 6 months ago, as far as general population is concerned, and will be very significant as it is bringing in an 800 cycle, which we will talk about in a few more contexts. But for today, at this moment, looking back at that point 6 months ago, Mars is now square to Saturn. It's a transit, whereas there it was conjunct. And so,
Yeah. And it's with, and Mars is conjunct Eris, who's and Mars is landing on her issues of alienation with this warrior planet that she is, and with Black Moon Lilith, who's also big on equal. She's the biggest equal rights advocate out there. So,
Yes.
So these issues are starting to land and get more heated, and
That's very good, because I was wondering, okay, like we know what Aquarius represents as far as what we've experienced, but we never quite know what is going to be ahead. We just surmise. And what you're bringing up are issues that have been trauma, because Aquarius can be genius and it has networking and technology, but because of its fast action, it can have also trauma. And which is this inequity of injustice is significant.
But it's raw, it's primal, it's willing to do whatever it takes.
Yes.
Whatever it takes. So yeah.
Good point.
And 6 months ago, they were asking us to stay at home around that time. I don't know the exact, I don't remember the exact
It
date.
was.
Now, you know, like I said before, people are reevaluating, transforming what is home. You know, do I want to be at home? Where I live, is that the place for me? So there's a lot of moving taking
What
place.
is home? What
Yes.
does it suffice? I think that's why people are moving.
And then Sarah, you said about Aries being isolated or
Well, she's the one that's been the alienated,
Alienated.
one, and that's her. That's been kind of her theme, at least for us at this current particular time, until we get to
Understand it more.
Understand it
Yeah,
more. Yeah.
ERIS, for those that might wonder, because Aries is ARIS, but Aries, ERIS, is the discontent, or not discontent, the disenfranchised one who really questions us. What's the truth of what's it all about, Alfie?
well, it's like an isolation or a separation from work, from friends, from family, where maybe when we weren't at stay at home,
Rejected.
right, stay at home, it like changed everything. Now it's like, okay, now what do I want to do? So it all fits. And then the sun is in the 9th house of higher education, philosophy, you know, my belief system of like, can I do something about this, or do I just turn it over to a higher power and let the higher power take care of it? Because there's things we can do something about, and there's things that we can't do anything about.
Particularly with Neptune squaring the nodes, I think is getting in I'm glad you said that, in alignment with the forces greater than us, such as nature, you know, whether it's a storm or whether it's COVID, in some sense, until we get our fix-it business, or Virgo.
Another point I wanted to make is, Mercury, the planet of communication, is also in a Mars-ruled sign, and it's easy to understand and not surprising that we observed one of the ugliest presidential debates in history. It's kind of had this, I think a lot of people have kind of felt and since this division on philosophical principles seems to be getting wider and scarier.
Well, when you speak of that, because, and I will say, when you say Mars ruled, it's in Scorpio. It's early Scorpio, which traditionally has been Mars. So, of course, that gets accepted. And modern-wise, it's Pluto. They're both representative. And they're at square with each other. So it's like the old and the new as far as Mars, which is defends and initiates combat to separate, and Pluto that transforms and looks for power or powerlessness. Mm-hmm. You know, they're distinctly similar but different. I mean, they're different too in a sense. And here they are in great contrast. And always with Aries that initiates the whole natural horoscope. Capricorn is at the 10th degree, which is a cardinal sign. And they also say it culminates, right? It's a culmination. So in a sense, what you initiate at when it gets to Capricorn is like, okay, now what's the structure of this? Is this structure holding? And that's what we're doing right now. We're looking at the structures and the conditioning do we want this? What don't we want? I mean, hopefully it's a distinction with fire signs. Hopefully it'll have some rationale of weeding it out and everything like that.
Well, and October is a 5-month, so I would suggest that people stay flexible, expect things to be different and unexpected. There's twists and turns, and it'll help you to put us on our right path.
A 5-month. What do you mean by that?
Well, because October is a number 1, and then the year is 2020 is a 4, so you add the 1 and the 4 together, and you come up with a 5-month.
Oh. Okay.
So universally,
and 5 is change because
yes.
it is an odd number. Right?
Yes, it's the middle number. It's like the
a lot of change. It's a big, big deal for change because they each have their signification. Now that leads me nicely to say that we will return quickly because Liz Muschett and Sara Stromley and the Moonbeam panel. This is October 3rd as we review. Well, we have with the full moon, but we have the moon to look at. And Liz will come up with the numerology as she has authored this great book. I'll tell you about that later.
While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. We are currently in the Yang period of Libra, ruled dually by Venus. By leaving the lower hemisphere of the self, the energy of Libra enters the arena where the completed self meets the other than self to form a relationship based on partnership. As a cardinal air sign on the descendant angle, represented by the equinox of equal light, Libra's energy learns through comparison and relationships, with the intention to integrate duality and polarities.
Welcome. This is Bear River, Usui Reiki Master and the astrologer of Psyche and Soul Astrology. You're listening to Talk Cosmos on Alternative Talk 1150 AM, where we unveil astrology's ancient archetypes that continually build the collective experiences in our unconsciousness.
Conversation you won't find on the rest of the dial. Alternative Talk 1150.
Hello, we are back again, and this is October 3rd. And just to correct, our repeat is on October 8th. Sorry, and we thank you for all that have been listening on October 8th, and we do hope that you will be happy going to Podcast One or going to Talk Cosmos. The link is right there. So we are continuing. This is with Liz Muschett and Sara Stromley, both in Washington, and Liz is in the Camino Island, Marysville area, and Sara is in the Redmond area. Although everybody is online these days, that's really where we're all at. And I'm moving, but I'm still in Seattle. I'll be going to Kailua Kona. Oh, okay, and we'll talk into the microphone. We're sitting here all together up at Liz's. It's very nice in Camino Island. So the point is, how do we fit our belief system of the practical into the impractical? If we look at both of these charts, Neptune, the great cosmos of the unknown and of the collective, is squaring. That's 90 degrees both to the south and the north node, which is these points, lunar points, of where we've come into with our belief systems, our religion, our ideas of how life is, and trying to get more communication and connections between spirit and matter. It could get involved of our neighborhoods. In a nutshell, that's one way of looking at it. So Liz is a numerologist also. Well, both my guests have tremendous skills, and Liz co-authored Gateways of Change, Navigational Seas of Change. And Liz, tell us about the numbers, the numerology of these two charts.
Well, on the full moon chart, we have ascended at 27 degrees, so that's a number 9, and the sun and moon are at 9 degrees. And so that's, we're tying up loose ends, we're completing things so that we can start a new cycle at 1 to begin anew. which we're going to have a new moon in a couple weeks, so that's pretty exciting. And then for the month of October, October is 1, and then you add that to the year, which 2020 is a 4. So the 1 and 4 add up to a 5. And so we have a 5 month of lots of change. So, my advice is stay flexible with the twists and turns and unexpected. And lots of times it puts us on the right path, even though we might not think so at the time. There's also 5s can be about addiction. So like watch how much sweets you eat this month, or how much potato chips with salt. It's just like, maybe don't drink a whole bottle of wine, maybe just have a couple of glasses. It's like, whatever the addiction could be. So that's what I have to say on the full moon. And then the new moon is at 24 degrees of Libra. So that 2 and 4 go to a 6. So there's service to our family and friends. Celebrations, we can oftentimes expect postponements, broken engagements, emotional whirlpools. And then there's lots of artistic pursuits such as music and art, maybe redecorating, cleaning out things.
Well, and it signifies with Libra, when you think of the artistic and the people, because it's all about relationship and beauty, there is that real signification of Venus and Libra of partnerships. It's the 7th house. And that will be October 16th here on the West Coast at 12:31 p.m. Pacific time. And of course, on the East Coast, it'll be 3:31. Or if you're in Hawaii, it'll be 9:31 in the morning. So it is fascinating how the numbers do real support the astrology. When you think of, like you were saying, be care, we're in that same period from October 1st of the full moon in Aries. It's about self, essentially. So watch ourself. Well, we do, but then later it's going to be about the connecting in relationships.
Yes, numerology can be very complementary to astrology, along with other modalities also. So,
which your book really signifies. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And Sara, you come up with elixirs of fascination about the whole Libra. In this case, whether it'll be Libra or Aries, I don't know what you'll.
I just what was telling. Yeah, for this particular time, there was potato flower essence that was pulling, and potatoes flower is actually this beautiful 5-pointed purple flower that has this wide central golden stamen that pokes out of it, and it grows from a climbing vine, and the petals themselves just seem to bend itself forward. And it's in the nightshade family, and the nightshades are controversial, because they can be poisonous in raw states and very powerfully medicinal in small homeopathic doses. Potato flower essence, and the reasons I like this is because it promotes grounding and greater dominion over all the senses that we have. And it stimulates a sense of embodiment and vitality and the desire for movement when we can feel paralyzed, especially for those that have felt physically restricted. So a lot of times it's used for people that are pregnant or going through some type of physical limitation. But it aids with the perspective and seeing through more dimensions and realities, and the ability to envision past current limitations.
Boy, it sounds very scorpionic, actually, because Mercury's in Scorpio, and the potato, I have that growing. It's a very nice fall plant because it's abundant, and it comes in different colors. I hadn't thought of, is this for like an essence, though, that would be like an oil?
So it's not an oil, it's a water-based flower essence. So it's energized.
Yeah.
It's a vibrational remedy is what it is.
Oh, it's so fascinating to think all these. Yes. And I might say both Sarah and Liz really have complementary, they share each other's abilities in other ways, but we're focusing on these two aspects to kind of augment how we see the moons, because moon is used since millennia, since the early dawn, how to grow, when to grow, how to grow. So plants are essential. And counting the moon and counting and everything, the numbers, they respond absolutely to this energy. If we look at this, so thank you, Sarah.
Yeah.
And thank you, Liz.
Mm-hmm.
Going to the chart, now this is the new moon that is, the Aries cut the way through so that we could realign, figure out our belief system. It's intense. If nothing else, I say that it wants to reconstruct intense commitments. That's reconstruct intense commitments to me is not just a mouthful. It's a lot of energy, and it seems on a daily basis, my own experience, and I think for those people that have been around, each of us are confronting this or experiencing and making decisions, because Libra is also decisions. So often how we're aligning that much of it gets back to the mental process, but there's also this instinctive and emotional process that is just relentless, really. Now, throughout that, Sarah, I'm going to ask you to talk about Spica a little bit, because it is 23 degrees, and as we know, and you had brought up in an earlier conversation, isn't that Spica? Spica is
the brightest. It's considered to be one of the most luckiest and brightest stars that we have in the sky. The ancients always perceived this as something that would bring favor and prominence to those that are favorably aspects, and they did worship that in that way. And the fact that this lunatation, being a new moon in Libra, is exactly conjunct that. It seems like it really helps aid the.
It's like a friend in need is a friend indeed.
Yes, it definitely
finds.
It definitely promotes that partnership and that partnering with the right people in the right situations. It's also associated with the harvest, just for those in the northern hemisphere, and those themes of, reaping what we sow.
That was a fascinating way of looking at it, because it is the sheath of the grain that's in the Virgo constellation of harvest and success and growth. But the fact that
it's especially lucky for those that have been
productive and
working towards whatever needs to be, what needs to come through.
And it also it works, and I won't say it works against, but it loves arts and sciences, but it does not like the unscrupulous or the unfruitfulness or injustice to innocence. So it really has, in a sense, it works very closely with Aries that wants to defend. So it has wants a productiveness for the multitudes.
Yes.
Seems very not a benefactor, but a benevolence. That's what I'm thinking.
And the fact that it is, and kind of repeating back to what you brought up earlier, this lunatation is trine the South Node in Gemini. And for those in the Pacific Northwest, and more emphasis around Seattle.
North Node.
Yeah, the North Node, I meant. The North Node is trine, that lunatation in Libra, 23 degrees, is trine that North Node, as well as the Descendant in Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury. And it seems that it has, it could be very fortuitous for those that are looking to bring these polarized positions
into context.
Bring them back to the table. Like Mercury in Scorpio is just phenomenal at finding and uncovering secrets.
Oh yes, yeah. It digs it. Well,
And it finds, what is
no
most
nonsense.
what is your precious? What is most precious to you, and how can we use this to our advantage? So it could be bringing two polarized sides back to the negotiating table to work out these differences that are so prominent right now.
Mercury is doing a lot of work too with the Venus that's moved from the new moon, full moon, where it was in Leo, and not going into that factor right here, but it's now in Virgo, will be in Virgo. So it's a mental assessment, helping in that sense of how to discern and whatnot. So Mercury is working on a lot of our mental capacities, working on a lot of fronts.
That Mars is really, really hot, and that Saturn stationary in Capricorn is really, really cold and dry. So, like, how can we find a nice warm medium here?
Well, now, Liz, you are bringing out, and I say bringing out because people are saying when. Well, we have a little pre-conversation, kind of edit ourselves, and so I am remembering this. And Liz was reminding that Pluto is going to go direct, I think, in October.
Tomorrow.
Oh my gosh, tomorrow. Okay, bring it home.
So, we had Saturn less than a week ago. And so when the outer planets go stationary direct or stationary retrograde for at least a week before and a week after, it's pretty intense energy. So we're on the week after Saturn's direct, and Pluto has been at the week pre-going direct. So it's pretty intense energy. And for the Seattle chart, it's in the first house again. We have another Sagittarius rising chart. So, with the events of the moons, it's emphasizing that Sagittarian energy of philosophy and truth, and it's in the first house of how can we transform and still stay in our truth, be true to ourselves. And then it's the new moon is in the 10th house, and it's like, okay, in that 10th house, it's like it's a new moon, so it's like we can seed new energy with our wishes and desires on the new moon. But how do I want to be seen different? Am I looking for a different job? Am I looking, again, like people have been relocating, so maybe they're working from home, maybe they're looking for a new job.
What partnerships?
Part is still emphasizing the partnership. So, but it's, am I getting a new position at work? Am I starting some new projects? The ascendant degree here, add them together and you come up with a 1. So it's like reinforcing that 9 from the full moon of completing things. Now we come to a new moon, and now we have a 1 to start seeding things. It's like, what are we going to seed? And just because you plant it on a day doesn't mean that tomorrow or 3 days later
the roots need to grow.
Right. I mean, sometimes it can go that fast, but not always. Generally, it takes a little while. So this is really exciting to me. It's amazing. And the nodes are square. The south node in Sagittarius and the north node in Gemini are squares to the sun and moon in Libra, and Mars in Aries, and black moon Lilith in Aries. So we have a grand square going on of some tension, but that just means we have to work on things. I said it wrong.
Yeah, say that again, because you're looking at two things. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so sorry about that. The nodes in Sagittarius and Gemini are square to Venus and Virgo and Neptune and Pisces. Thank you, Sue, for
No, that's okay. But the fact is, you like many times I'll come up with a new word because two words jam in together and it comes out. And it is a kaleidoscope of many aspects. Mm-hmm. And so one is mutable, and that is the nodes where we're coming from, which is so strongly aligned with that ascendant, at least here on the West Coast, where it's our entry point. It's like where we're coming from is really major, but other people are bringing in new information And then we have that with our values and our sense of survival, which Venus represents. And we're analyzing along with the cosmos, thank you, of represented by Neptune in Pisces. But since we're talking about the new moon, which is every 28 days cycle, and is in Libra later, 23 degrees, 53, on that spica, fixed star energy that we brought up, it's opposing Mars.
Yes, and Aries.
And it's in a T square with, so now we have our ego, just for a loose way, our will, our the sun energy, along with our emotional moon energy, which is as an embodiment together, in attention of looking at what our actions are, how are we going to separate, and between that, how do we work with our conditions, our regulations, our rules, our structures of life in all these forms, which are represented by Jupiter, that's a 1 year cycle, and Saturn that's moving forward. Both Saturn is leaving its 2.5 year cycle, and those two are marching ahead to December. So we're going through a lot of transformation of our partnerships with Libra. So when you said that, you really brought in a mouthful. There's a lot there.
Well, and make sure you do your intentions, wishes, or desires on this new moon, because yes, it will require some work with that grand cross and the T square, but make your wishes and desires, either write them down or paint something that represents them, because with some work that you will manifest them easily.
And Spica's there.
Yes.
So, yeah, get a boost from Spica.
Yeah, and what you're bringing up too, I remember looking at you, Sarah, or maybe whoever it was at this point, but the fact that the North Node is in Gemini, I think the idea when you say write it down, make form, because why are words, Gemini words, when it's the written word, it's a form, it's been formed from the universe and a concept into this tool, and it helps manifest. So I think the idea that you're bringing up to do a vision board or do just journaling or some kind of a intention, wishes, is always valuable, but particularly as this time with the North Node in Gemini, in this access that we're having.
Well, and I would make the intentions without the how or the why, because
yes,
lots of times we'll think, I need $100,000 to do X. Well,
yes.
Don't even put that in there. It's just like what your intention is be clear on that. And then the rest can take care of itself, because maybe 10 other people have the same idea and they want to do it with you. So that would be $10,000 each instead of $100,000 for one person.
Oh, in other words, yes, I think this is excellent, because really, and it goes along with Neptune, that's also part of that mutable grand square. By grand square, we mean that every 90 degrees is some action points that want to get resolved. And so there it is, the cosmos, because if we're in partnership with the cosmos, we do as much as we can do and we create it, but then we're sensitive to how things are happening that comes to us, that we attract, that come in our way, and we accept, or we realign ourselves and realize it could come to us in a different way than our mortal brain is capable of understanding.
Exactly, because don't block what wants to come or manifest.
Yes, be open, receptive. Through thick and thin, yes.
It is interesting to note that Mercury is, the ruler of this new moon. Mercury's opposed Neptune, and Neptune is opposed the ascendant.
No, Mercury is opposing Uranus, isn't it? Am I mixed up?
No. Right.
Yes.
Not Mercury. Venus.
Venus. Okay.
Venus is opposing Neptune.
Okay. Sorry.
And squaring the ascendant. So, that can be, just some difficulty with really setting, challenges with setting the right boundaries. And discernment. And
well, it is yes, and that supports the idea that we're not in total control.
yeah,
Understanding that, and I think that's a large message of astrology from my aspect. I've listened to astrologers and saying by itself astrology is not spiritual, which of course nothing has to be, but yet really looking at these greater forces through this lens of amazing reflection through what we can see and understanding greater. Part of it is really accepting there are energies beyond our understanding at whatever point that we can begin to perceive signs and understand it, but there is this sense that working collaboratively with society.
So we just don't want to, there's a very pure theme with Venus in Virgo that's very conscientious and has some very chaste views of what's pure, what's right, what's perfect.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes it's healthy to get that a little bit diluted, to distill that down into something that can work.
I see.
Over the long term.
Good clarity there. Yes. Just a quick mention, next week on the 10th of October will be the Cosmic Collaboration, and we'll be talking about a solar arc point, which might seem abstract, but Pluto has entered Libra, and we will talk about that because for the USA. I said that a little backwards. I'm sorry. I'm trying to sift it out quickly, but it could have emphasis. It happens about 8 times already in our history, but it's significant. It happens every 30 years, but that's what we'll be talking about. And tonight I am talking with the Moonbeam Team. That's Sara Stromley and Liz Muschett. Tonight is October 3rd. You can hear these repeats at Podcast 1, or else go to Talk Cosmos. We have about our guests there. You can contact them and see the schedule. And there's a few other little good links. And there's always the link to Podcast 1. And subscribe if you would like. We'd be glad to let you know on our monthly basis when we return. So we have a few minutes, and we're talking about summarizing now with the Libra new moon. That'll happen on October 16th. That's at 12:31 p.m. in Seattle, or 3:31 on the East Coast, and 3:31 a.m. in the morning in Hawaii, just to give a few grounding points of that. And it is in alignment with a fixed star, and it's because it's at such a distance it doesn't seem to move. And that's Spica. It has abundance because it relates to grain of growth.
And Venus is also trine Jupiter.
Aha! Let's talk about that.
So, yeah, Jupiter wants to expand whatever it touches, and when it's in an earthy sign, those both are in earthy signs that really want to make things happen on a material plane and see it in form and structure in very practical ways, I'd say.
We need these connecting forces because there is a little help there. Yeah, I think Venus is so important. It's also the ruler of Uranus because it's in Taurus there. So getting to our authentic values, that's a very important point to remember that analyzing this has.
So make sure you do your desires and wishes because they will come to pass. It's like you might not have the full picture. They'll have to have some transformation or changing of what you put down, but it'll come together but there's going to be a little bit of shift from what it is. So don't think it's going to be exactly what you write down. It's like leave room for it to be better. How's that?
Yeah, work with the universe. Oh, that's good. And besides, if you do this on a monthly basis, it begins to confirm this energy. The energy and you begin to talk more with each other. Well, we have just a few seconds left. I can let music back. I'm so grateful to all of you. We thank you very much and look forward to connecting on a basis always. Moonbeam Team will be back on Halloween, by the way. So you can listen to us then. Yeah.
We look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, along with who knows what the months will bring. It's only a few weeks, but hey, tomorrow it all goes direct. Yeah.
Hip hip hooray.
Woo! We can make those dreams. Hey, and you can also do your wishes and dreams after the 16th, right?
Yes.
That's
yes.
it. So do it just a little bit after, because then it really connects. You can think about it now, but the motion will happen.
Yeah, and I like Liz's suggestion to leave it open. I like adding, whatever I wish.
Okay.
Or something better.
I like that.
Talk to you again.
Good night. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and guests unveil astrology's ancient archetypes that continually build the collective experiences in our unconsciousness. Be sure to tune in next Saturday at 6 p.m. to continue finding your roots in the stars.